What's up, everybody? Aaron Feely here, back again with White Sox Daily, as the Chicago White Sox have made a couple more moves yesterday. Some stuff to talk about here, and starting off with an article from ESPN with a bit of good news after a brief week of a lot of doom and gloom, especially here on this channel, about the prospects for the White Sox going forward. A lot of it brought on, of course, by some of the news from other teams, including the Mets and Dodgers, in a bidding war with unlimited money on both sides to sign every single free agent that has ever been born. The Chicago White Sox, though, appearing on an ESPN article that came out yesterday for the top 5 breakout candidates for 2026, the Chicago White Sox coming in at number 4 on that list, behind the Atlanta Braves, Baltimore Orioles, and Pittsburgh Pirates. Usually it's not a particularly fantastic sign when you are behind the Pittsburgh Pirates in any list ever. But, obviously the Pirates have made a very concerted effort this offseason to increase their offseason spending. They have been far more aggressive than we are accustomed to the Pirates being this offseason. And the White Sox have had a fairly decent offseason themselves, even though it wasn't quite the big splash, huge name free agents left and right like maybe a typical Yankees or Dodgers offseason might usually be. They did get one big-time free agent, of course. Murakami, kind of the jewel in the crown of the Chicago White Sox 2026 offseason to this point. A guy that a lot of us have high hopes for, a guy that a lot of us are believing to be a cornerstone of this team and the big power bat in this lineup, hopefully for years to come. And he was a big part in the White Sox being ranked in this top 5 breakout candidate article, as well as bringing in a number of relief pitchers, bringing in Newcomb, who might be a starter, might not be, who knows. They list the Chicago White Sox breakout target line at 71 wins, but also say they could easily surpass that if they have a real breakout type season. Now, obviously, a big part of that being considered a breakout is that they only won 61 games last year, and then they had an all-time record-setting bad year the year before that. So the breakout in this instance is, can they be less atrocious than they've been in the past? But I've been fairly reasonably positive here on this channel in regards to my thoughts about if you just get a few lucky breaks go your way that can really shift the overall win-loss record and the feel of this team come August. You're talking about a handful of games, in my estimation. If you can just get some of those to flip and just have a fortunate year, I think you're looking at a team that's absolutely going to be in the running to potentially break out, in the sense that they might even be still relatively competitive for a probably bad division in 2026, maybe a wild card spot. But I think the division's almost more attainable if the White Sox can play to their absolute peak with this roster that they've assembled to this point. I don't think this is a World Series contender just yet, but I do think it's a team that can be still playing interesting baseball come late season, come August, come September, a team that should be relatively in the general echelon of competitive at that point. And I think now ESPN's starting to get a little bit of sight of the vision that the Chicago White Sox are putting together over here, and they ended up making it onto that list. Another big theme of the offseason for the White Sox to this point has been the attacking of upside. A lot of these depth signings to this point have been minor league players with skill sets, with outside the country minor league production, or in a couple of cases, name recognition. The White Sox have signed yet another minor league deal to a player with some serious familial bloodline, as Darren Baker, second baseman, signed to the Chicago White Sox, 26 years old. His father, Dusty Baker, obviously a Hall of Fame manager, a guy that the White Sox have seen their fair share of, particularly back in the 2021 postseason when he did eliminate us in round one of that playoff. Dustin, really solid defensive second baseman and a guy that has been really good hitting for contact to this point in his minor league career. Even in his big league debut in 2024, ended up playing a handful of games, went 7 for 14, so he hit 500 as a major league player, ended up with 2 doubles, 5 singles, and he did end up with a run scored in very limited at-bats. Didn't end up making their roster in 2025 and was sent back down to AAA. Was granted his release at the end of the season, became a free agent, and now the White Sox add him as a potential depth piece to their minor league infield and farm system. He does not project as a guy that's going to end up making the 40-man roster. He'll probably be more of a minor league player for the White Sox this coming season. But a guy that, of course, has a lot of intelligence, a high baseball IQ, a really solid defensive player, hits for contact. Basically, if Chase Mydroth were to have something inexplicable happen to him, maybe you have Chase Mydroth Jr. now waiting for you down in the minor leagues with Darren Baker. Certainly doesn't hurt to have as many solid defensive players as you can accumulate to fill out your farm system to potentially use in the future. He has struggled with creating any sort of power production to this point, but there does come a certain point when you just have to look at a guy and say, if that's not your game, I guess that's just not your game, and take him for what he is and what he's worth. And what he's worth right now is a guy that is going to be a nice 8 or 9 hole hitter for you if he ever ends up kind of hitting his stride, hitting his peak, and becoming a major league second baseman. That's probably going to be the role he ends up filling. He'll be a guy that can hit towards the bottom of your lineup, can get on base for you to set up the top of your order, and is going to play really solid defense. So another potential upside type signing, a guy that hasn't played a great deal of major league ball, but has the IQ and has the defensive prowess to project as a potential future starter in Major League Baseball. Another minor league signing for the Chicago White Sox recently, they did add Rylan Kaufman to the mix. Draft pick of the Kansas City Royals, a former top 30 prospect in their minor league system. Did miss all of last season with Tommy John surgery. He is expected to be fully healthy, ready to go by the start of the season and presumably by spring training. He's a guy with upper 90s fastball stuff, left-handed relief pitcher. The relief pitcher part, more of a projection to this point, as he has mostly been a starter with Double-A for Kansas City. They drafted him out of San Jacinto College in 2018. 6'4" guy, a lot of length, creates a lot of velocity. Really good tools as a pitcher. He has struggled with his consistency, which is why a lot of sites have him projected as a relief pitcher once he makes it to the major leagues. He's a guy that has incredible stuff, great strikeout pitches, and incredible speed and velocity on his fastball, as we've mentioned, but a guy with a 5.41 ERA to this point, as he occasionally struggles with the strike zone and with consistency as the game goes on. As hitters start seeing him more and more, he tends to get hit around a little bit more, which again leads to the probably better off as a one-inning guy than being a full-time starter. And that's fine. Another guy, one of these signings, you bring him in on a minor league contract because of his upside, because of the overwhelming stuff and the overwhelming heat on that fastball. You take a swing on him, sign him to a minor league deal, probably going to start off in Birmingham to begin the season, and then we'll just see where it goes. Another one of these half-decent bargain bin signings, this time not necessarily in a negative light, but in a, if it works out, he could be something really nice. And if he doesn't, whatever, you paid league minimum for him. So, not a bad deal for the Chicago White Sox in the slightest. And then we'll end things off here talking about some other potential deals the White Sox could still make. We've talked about one of these players multiple times here on the channel. Um, but a couple of guys as the White Sox beginning to creep closer and closer towards spring training, a couple of positions that still inexplicably need filled. And not in a you need upgrades there. I mean, literally in a you don't have a player on your roster to fill the spot on the roster yet. In a couple more starting pitchers and some more outfield help. And some guys that they could easily bring back who have spent the entire free agency period to this point with their phones either on silent or just haven't been getting any rings to this point, because we haven't heard any noise at all about Martin Perez or Mike Tauchman, two guys that were fairly decent for Chicago last year. I haven't heard any buzz whatsoever in connection with those two guys with any other teams. They've received no offers to this point. And if that continues, you could easily bring both of them back on fairly cheap deals, relatively speaking, to fill the hole once again going into next season. We obviously already talked about Tauchman numerous times on this channel, a guy that had kind of an up year last year. A lot of White Sox fans started falling in love with him and what he brought relative to our expectations of him. Started hitting towards the top of the lineup for us for a majority of last year and played solid defensively. Martin Perez was solid. I mean, 3.54 ERA in 2025. A guy that was very serviceable as a starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. They obviously let him walk for a reason. They didn't feel like he was necessarily just a phenomenal, overwhelming guy that was critical to the future going forward. But now that you're in desperate need of guys towards the back end of that starting rotation anyway, and it's looking like his price tag is getting lower and lower with each passing day that no one else seems to be hopping on to try to get him over to them, could be a reunion worth exploring. But yeah, that's going to do it as far as news for today. I've been Aaron Feely with White Sox Daily. We'll see you guys again tomorrow.